heard on the radio the other day a gentleman talking about learning to do things, and his commitment is to do them for 30 days at a time, like that TV show 30 Days. And the thing he was not successful at was meditating. And I thought he needs to come to our church and learn to meditate for 1 to 3 minutes every week, because you guys are awesome. Everybody just does it. So, perfectly imperfect. I say it often as a reminder to show compassion, often for myself. I need to be reminded that being imperfect is perfect. It's perfectly imperfect. It is one of my favorite sayings, and it's well known in the 12-step community for those of you who have attended. Many addicts and their family members are often dealing with the twin poles of perfectionism and shame. To heal, they need to learn acceptance, compassion, love, and ultimately trust for themselves, which leads to trust for others. So much trust has been broken in those relationships that each of those steps is leading them home to trust again. For different reasons, I was challenged to learn trust as a young adult. I was raised by 2 dueling perfectionists that each believed that their version of perfect was the more perfect one. I had 2 very intelligent architects that chose to raise me and my 3 brothers. My mother was the epitome of the efficient woman. You know that song from the 70s, I bring home the bacon and fry it up in the pan? That was my mother. She got up every morning before 6 o'clock so she could get her hair done and her makeup done and her clothes on and the purse at the front door done. And then she cooked breakfast for my brothers. Everything was on the table by 6:30. And then she got them all ready. And all the beds were made, the closet doors were closed, the towels were hung, the clothes were in the laundry. Everything was completed. She got them out the door by 7:15. She dropped one off at the junior high, the other 2 at the high school. She went to work. She then came home. Oh, I was left to my dad. So I had the easier morning because I was much younger. So we got to sing songs to the radio and do all sorts of things. So I had a better upbringing as far as that goes. She got home at 3:30 or 4 o'clock, took a half-hour nap, precisely a half-hour nap, got up, started dinner. She then proceeded to clean things around the house. I never knew what they were, but she was always puttering, doing something. And then, or anything that got missed in the morning, which really wasn't anything. And dinner was promptly served at 6:30. I set the table, cleared the table, loaded the dishwasher, and sometimes did the hand wash, but usually I had help from my mother because she was up working too. And after dinner, she cleaned and wiped down the table, the bar, the counters, the stove, and cleaned out the inside of the oven every night. She then mopped the floor, under the table, through the family room, under the bar, through the kitchen, and out the laundry room every night. Laundry was started and folded by the end of the night. She also then watched 1 hour of television, got all of us in bed. Everything was done, all homework was done, and on weekends, we lived in a big 5-bedroom house, by the way. It was designed by my parents. It was a mid-century contemporary, and the entire front of the entire house was glass. So on Saturday mornings, we washed all those windows. And we picked up the leaves in the patio, and we cleaned the pool, and we did the garden, and we took care of everything in the house. And it all had all white floors, and we did all of this. And if you wonder where I get my energy, I probably get it from my mom. Now, both of my brothers are messes. I'm kind of a mess too, but I try really hard not to be. It's fascinating because with all of that, we never had a gardener. We never had a housekeeper. We never had a pool care person. None of that. We did it all ourselves. My house, the house was my mother's self-esteem. It was my mother's self-esteem, and it was immaculate. Once a friend of mine exclaimed, "Oh, I didn't know your mom was sick." I laughed. I looked at her and said, "What makes you think mom's sick?" She goes, "Well, there's a cigarette in the ashtray." And my mom had gone to the grocery store. My dad had smoked a cigarette, put it out, and she wasn't there to clean it up immediately. So literally, everything was always put away. Inside the closets, the sheets were ironed. That was my job on the weekend. I ironed the sheets. I ironed my brother's T-shirts. All of this was done. Now, my father, on the other hand, was more confident than my mother. He did not need a spotless home or office to reassure himself. He already knew that his design choices were far superior. Consequently, after building the house, my parents didn't work together anymore. My mother refused. So, don't get me wrong. Daddy was extremely talented. That his work and the accolades that came with them bear that out. He really was. But collaboration was not his strong suit. Or at least, maybe, collaboration with women was not his strong suit. That is a real possibility. So from then, I learned that perfection was the goal, and perfection does not lead to self-acceptance. It leads to doubt, denial, shame, because you're not good enough, and hiding, because perfection is an impossible goal. You're never, ever good enough. So as a young adult, I ranged from insecure and nervous to overconfident and full of hubris. I was out of balance, so I went searching for help in my mid-20s. I went to weekend seminars on self-acceptance, week-long seminars on self-acceptance. I joined communities that charged too much money for their services and continually asked for more money and then more money. They almost felt cultish, but they pretended to be legitimate businesses. I put up Post-it notes on my mirror with affirmations so I would see these multiple times a day. My girlfriend assured me that if I put them on the left-hand side of the mirror, I would absorb them into my psyche more readily. I tried writing long essays, journaling daily, and gratuity journals, all of which I love to do, but I wasn't ready for them yet, so they didn't do much at all. I went to a therapist who could only take me as far as she was, which turned out to be not very far. She was so self-absorbed, and now I know one of the biggest narcissists I've ever met. It wasn't just about accepting that I was talented, valuable, or worthy. I was frequently pegged as a leader, someone who had what it takes, and yet I felt like I was failing. I struggled to feel legitimate. I felt like a fake. I kept trying to convince myself if I said I was enough, wrote it enough, read it enough, I would become enough. Somehow I would morph into this thing I did not believe I could be. Charles Hazelwood, the renowned international composer, described this very thing in his well-known talks on trust between a conductor and the musicians in his orchestra. His descriptions are mesmerizing. If you have never heard him talk, he does a TED Talk that is just amazing. According to Charles Hazelwood, it is the conductor's job to have a very clear sense of the framework of a piece of music so that the members of the orchestra can have freedom to shine within it. Freedom to shine within it. They must complete the trust in one another so that they can spin a musical narrative between them. He describes the early days of his career when he was fearful and unsure if he could command upwards of 100 musicians to respond at the same time. He was quite challenged with untrusting. We can probably all relate to having an insecure boss. What happens when your boss or supervisor is insecure? What happens? They overcompensate. They micromanage. They give you no freedom to do your work and do your job, right? So what happens when a conductor overcompensates? Their gestures become bigger and bigger. And when they get bigger and bigger, they are too big and they are inconsistent. And the bigger the gesticulation, the more difficult it is for the orchestra to interpret. And then the music becomes muddy. And then the conductor gets bigger. And so it gets worse and worse. And it follows by muddier sound and trust is lost further. So, reality was, he was so fearful that his ideas weren't valuable. He could not be clear with the musicians. He discovered that he had to first learn to trust himself. And once he trusted himself, he could walk into the space knowing that he was bringing value to the equation, so he could keep his instructions to the orchestra precise, and that every musician present could then be free to bring what they had to the table. They could show their talents, and everybody was then free to create together. What a gift. What a gift. And it is not hubris. It is knowing. It is knowing that you have a gift to offer. For me, the process was not about learning a new task or convincing my psyche. It was really about letting go. I didn't need to know that I could do these things. I needed to let go. If I was needing to let go, I needed to know what to let go of. And to find out, I had to go on a deep, dark search. I found a good therapist, a woman of great wisdom. I went back to writing, but this time I had to be completely honest with myself. I was looking deep inside at my darkest, most shameful secrets. It was a long process of discovery and uncovering. There were things I blamed myself for that as I wrote I realized were absurd, so some healing came quickly. But to my dismay, I discovered it wasn't enough. It was not enough to write it down and discover it. I could write it down, I could know it, but the shame was still there. I could not cover it over with affirmations. I had to completely let it go. And to let it go, I had to tell it to someone. And telling it to my therapist was not completely it. My deepest, most shameful secrets had to be told, and they had to be told to somebody else. So, first choice, I procrastinated. I procrastinated for a few months and said, okay, fine, it's time. So I found somebody safe. And that's a really important thing to do, because if you're going to share your deepest secrets, it's best to have a safe person. And I was lucky I chose well. I told one woman, and it was okay. She was safe. It was healing. So I did it again. And this time I did it with a group of women. We were a small group, and we spent a year. We spent a year working on deep, dark secrets in a format, in a group. And the most surprising thing happened. I received total acceptance. No criticism, no shock, each woman relating and having similar experiences. I thought I was alone in this world. I thought that what I had to share was so horrific I would be rejected, and instead I found out I was human. Simply that. I was human, because we all have things to share. The greatest surprise of all was that through this process, I became more compassionate. I thought I was pretty compassionate to begin with. Little did I know that there was a deeper well. Now I know that that well is deeper still, and I have more work to do. Every day, every week, every month, that well gets deeper, and I find more. I was able to hear other stories, women from all walks of life. These were not my compatriots. These were women from completely different backgrounds. And we had so much in common because we are human. I could embrace them and love them and accept their humanity, and they accepted mine. And what a blessing it was those women did that for me. It showed me that I could do that for myself. The only requirement, I had to continue to be absolutely honest with myself. Brené Brown, researcher, writer, educator, is known for her work on shame, courage, compassion, and trust. Through her research, she confirms that trust is built in many small gestures over time. It does not come about from one grand gesture. She felt if we were going to be able to discuss when trust has been broken, we're going to need to define the specific things that build trust. So she turned to her research, and this is what she developed. She chose the acronym BRAVING, B-R-A-V-I-N-G. B is for boundaries. There is trust if you are clear about your boundaries and you hold to them, and you are clear about my boundaries and you respect them. Without boundaries, there can be no trust. R, reliability. What do you do what we say we are going to do, not once, but 100 times. Also, we are clear on our limitations, and boy, am I bad at this one. We are clear on our limitations so that we don't take on so much that we come up short and don't deliver on our commitments. And this applies not just professionally, but personally. We don't take on so much that we come up short and don't deliver on our commitments. And that means that I don't take on so much that I don't deliver on my commitments so that it interferes with my personal life. And I tend to do this a lot. I run out of time in my personal life, so I'm hurting my commitments personally. So, A, accountability. If you make a mistake, I can only trust you if you own it, you apologize, and you make amends. If I make a mistake, I can only trust you if you allow me to do the same. V, the vault. If I share something with you, you hold it, and you do not share it with anyone else. If you share something with me, I do the same. But there's a back door to that vault. If someone else shares something with you in confidence, you do not share it with me. And if you do, I will lose trust. And if I do, you will lose trust with me. A confidence is a confidence. And as tempting as it is to share somebody else's confidence, that loses trust as well. So it's a vault to keep sacred. I, integrity. This is an interesting definition she gave, and I love it. Choose courage over comfort. Choose what's right over what's fun, fast, or easy. Practice your values. Don't just profess them. N, non-judgment. I can fall apart, stumble, and ask for help without being judged, and you can do the same. That sounds pretty easy, right? The challenge is that for most of us, it's easier to give up help than to ask for help. It's interesting because one of the main things that people list as a reason for engendering trust is someone's ability to ask for help. And yet for most of us, it's the hardest thing to do. It's easier to give help. And if you judge yourself for needing help, you likely judge others for needing help, even if you aren't aware of it. Because what you judge yourself for, you judge others for. You know how the person who's so much like you is the person that's hardest to get along with? Just keep that in mind. So give yourself a break. It's okay to ask for help. G is for generosity. Our relationship is only a trusting relationship if you can assume the most generous things about my words, intentions, and behaviors, and then check in with me. If I have forgotten something important to you, you call, and we have a conversation, and I do the same for you. There is no waiting and holding resentment. The benefit of braving is that it gives us a framework when trust has been broken. So if I feel like there is a problem in our relationship, I can review it and be more likely to find the specific issue in question. The really great thing about braving is it works on your relationship with yourself as well. It gives a way to evaluate your own trust issues with yourself. From the wisdom of Maya Angelou, I don't trust people who don't love themselves and tell me I love you. There is an African saying, be careful when a naked person offers you a shirt. Finally, wabi-sabi is a Japanese form of art that is intentionally imperfect and incomplete. thus making it more beautiful. May we all be proudly wabi-sabi.